Hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me. We at Cypress can say that we would be nothing without lots of developers and testers and people related to passionate about quality, right? We would not be successful by not having a giant community of people willing to try Cypress, give us feedback, and let us actually improve it. I have a couple of slides that I prepared. This presentation is going to be short, so don't worry, it's not going to be boring, long presentation. I want to give you 3 points. What we've done lately that I think is important, what we're working on right now, and if you want to see the news and follow Cypress, where to go to actually find it out. These slides are shared. I posted on the chat channel. If you want to follow me personally, I'm on Twitter. I have my personal site with all the projects. I have my own blog where I actually post a lot of Cypress related content as well. So you can find me there. Okay, let's see. Latest features. We heard again and again that people want to see good testing practices. If you have a realistic application, what kind of tests should I write? How many tests? How should every test be organized? Should it be short, like unit test? Should it be longer and go through the user story, like end-to-end tests, like we consider? How should I deal with data and my database? Should I reset it somehow? How should I reset it? Should I create new table every time, or can I share the table? Can I do a single site visit before a group of tests and then continue? So we made what we call real-world app. It's publicly available. It's a modern financial application that we develop from scratch. It has a bunch of things, right? It should be a realistic application, just like what our users want to test in their professional life. And then we've written a bunch of tests. We've written tests that exercise particular screens, the whole user flow, the logins, all sorts of things. I think there are more than 100 separate end-to-end tests. And we also, because it has a backend, we also show you how to do API testing using Cypress, using site request. So you can see how the API tests work. And we like to write end-to-end tests and API tests because if something fails, you should be able to tell quickly which part failed. Is it the backend or is it the front end? And by having separate group of API tests, they quickly alert you to a failure, and you can quickly find if it's coming from a backend that changed or from a front end where something else has changed. So check out our real world application. Another thing that we recently launched is that those little dashboard buttons, right? As you can see right here, site test, 53 pass, 0 fail, 0 skip. And I know it's a small feature. You might say, oh, it's nothing, I don't care. But this is something we wanted for a long time. We wanted a real status badge, and you can configure like if it's just a summary kind of fail pass, or if it shows per group status, or if it shows like here, number of passing tests, failing, and skip tests. Because I think if you put the status of your project, right, the quality, front and center in your README, so with a single class, you can see, is my project doing okay? Or are there failing tests? Or there are more tests than I expected, or fewer tests than I expected? What has happened? I think a badge allows you to actually put the quality front and center. And when you click on a badge and you go look at the test results. I wanted it for a long time. I'm very happy that this finally happened. Another thing what we've done recently was the test retries. So Cypress has a built-in retry mechanism for like finding elements, clicking on them. This is fine. This is still there. But when you're writing end-to-end tests, there are so many moving parts. You're operating a real browser on top of your application, on top of communication with real backend in most of the cases. That probably calls other services. There is network and CI machine limitations and all sorts of crazy things. So sometimes, despite your best efforts, the test fails. Maybe there was like temporary network miscommunication, right? And what happens when you have 100 tests and each one has 1% chance of flake? Well, normally then 100 tests, at least one will fail, and you rerun the CI job and it passes. Now, I completely agree that you should make your test as reliable, as repeatable as possible. No denying that. Do everything. But often, this flake, this 1% flake, is outside of your control. And if you chase it, you'll have to recreate the whole internet from scratch in your controlled network. So we decided to just introduce test retries as a first-class core feature of Cypress. Before, it was just a plugin. And what happens there? If you enable it in your Cypress settings, if you enable it, by default it's disabled, no test retries. But you can say, if a test fails, retry it maybe 2-3 times. And in your UI in Cypress, it actually shows you, right? So the first attempt of Cypress, this test failed, and then the second and third. And if it fails 3 times, then the test really fails. But if it fails first time and maybe passes on the second time, you let that build continue. You still have all this information, so you can investigate and maybe make the test robust and maybe look at the root cause of a flaky test. But it should not stop the build, because in normal situations, you just rerun the CI job and it passes, and then you forget about it, right? So we decided that test retries for realistic environments is a very important feature. So we made it as a core. And kind of related to that were the test analytics for our dashboard. So the beauty of Cypress is that it's open source product. You can run Cypress, you can use it in your organization. There is no feature limitations, nothing. We are happy that Browser Stack offers a commercial service on top of our open source service, right? We're fine. We absolutely encourage that. Where we derive value as our company that allows us to actually put money and time into improving the test run itself is the dashboard. That's where we keep all the information for organization. So if you have hundreds of thousands of test runs, are your test runs failing? Did they start failing recently, right? All this historical information, right, is important for business organizations, not for individual developers. So we recently now offered test analytics on our dashboard that shows you how often things fail, how maybe a test changes over time, and if it's flaky, if it started failing in particular branch, if it started failing after particular commit. So we offer all this history of a test and analytics. Okay, what are we working on right now? The most exciting thing for me are the component tests. So Cypress is good at end-to-end tests, right? Open a URL, click on buttons, see if things appear, use all sorts of plugins to do visual testing if you want. But what about component, like numbers in this case? Can you test that, right? So we started doing this recently. Here's a typical component test where you say mount, and mount comes from a particular framework adapter. So before, Cypress was framework agnostic, and it still is for end-to-end test. But if you're testing a React application, now you have additional thing that you can do. You can say, take this mount from Cypress React Unit Test, import that component, and then mount that component. So instead of site visit, you say mount, just like you can do in other test frameworks like Enzyme, like React Testing Library, all those things. Once you mount it, it's asynchronous command. After that, you use the rest of normal Cypress commands. And what you see actual component running as a mini web application. In this case, it prints numbers 1. And then you say, well, it doesn't look real because in my application, there are styles. Well, you can just import your CSS. This spec uses your normal bundling preprocessor. You can just point it at your Webpack or React scripts, wherever. So you can import the same things. And then all of a sudden that component will use that CSS. And you'll say, oh, it doesn't look real. Well, because my component has to be surrounded by specific markup for that CSS to be applied correctly. So you just surround it in your test. Think of a component running in a mini web application, and now it looks real. And then you can use all the Cypress commands like passing stubs and clicking it through UI like a user and checking that that sub property was called, and you will see it everywhere, right? So just the mount is different. You want to surround it with some data with like provider, you can, and then you can check what specific number really shows correctly. If you have a game, you can play that game, right, as a component, not the whole application. So imagine your pyramid of components and you can test individual parts, then maybe test a larger component all the way to the top. And then you can have end-to-end tests as well to make sure the whole application is working. And just like normal time traveling debugger, for component testing, it's exactly the same thing. You can see every command, but notice there is no URL because you're testing just the component. So I think this is pretty powerful. It's much better experience, at least in my opinion, than testing a component in a terminal, like for example, Just would do, in a browser emulation using Just DOM. No, this is real browser, just like your end-to-end test would do. So I'm really excited. We got a special team now going it. We're hiring 2 people who will start. So we'll have like 5 people working nonstop on component testing for every framework. We're already Cypress, Vue unit test, Cypress, Angular unit test, Cypress, Svelte unit test, you name it. But we'll improve the features, make sure they all work as you would expect. And finally, the testing pyramid. I cannot talk about testing without testing pyramid. Here's my view of testing and how I test web apps nowadays. I don't say end-to-end test, integration test, unit test. I start with the central portion. I start with functional, Cypress end-to-end test, and I'll add a visual testing from Percy, Applitools, Hapo, open source, doesn't matter. So I will drive my application through Cypress tests. I will assert that certain classes are applied, buttons appear also. And then I'll take screenshots and do visual testing periodically at like all the major steps of my user story. That's it. That's what I will do. And then I will look and say, well, this part of application, it's a component that does a bunch of things. Inside my application, it only does one, but I want to make sure it works correctly in all circumstances. So for that, I will write component tests, just like I showed before. And then I'll say, well, where is this logic, for example, that computes, I don't know, the basket checkout price of a thing? Let me unit test those particular pieces of logic, because I know it works in an end-to-end and component test, but I just want to make sure that it does the thing if inputs are invalid, for example. So I will write unit tests. And then maybe my web application and my components interact with backend API. So if I want to like really be sure, I'll write a couple of API tests. Okay, so I call it testing crab because it kind of looks like a crab sitting on legs. And people say, well, you know, unit tests, API tests are very fast. Agree. But the end-to-end Cypress tests are not that slow. They're not like a turtle. They're slower than unit tests, I agree, but they're as fast as your application is. So if you want faster Cypress tests, make a faster web app. Okay, so I think the difference is now a degree. It's not like a rocket versus a turtle. It's more like a car versus a horse, still acceptable. But what's more interesting to me is the effectiveness. How much of your application can you test in a single test or a couple of tests? And I think a combination of end-to-end tests with image visual tests that kind of like compare the whole thing are super effective. They're like a big, well, in London you would say lorry, right? But carries a lot of weight, a cargo. And the unit test and component test and API test, they're a lot more focused and just test one particular thing. So they're fast, but they're not as effective as the whole thing together. Okay, so that was my kind of view of testing. If you want to learn more, you can always follow me on Twitter, check out my blog. I blog about component testing and things like that. If you want to see what Cypress has done recently, we have changelog. We maintain it very, very well, I think, with links to the issues and all the work. You can read, we announce all the features on our blog. So you can follow Cypress blog, where I sometimes also write. And you can see what we're working on right now, maybe in the future, like the big things are on our roadmap. And specifically the component testing, we now have its own dedicated page for component testing. So Sriram, thank you very much for inviting me. I hope you kind of get the big picture of Cypress and what we're working on. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. It's really great, actually. So to know that what Cypress is doing, especially the testing pyramid, where we got multiple tools for different things. We got one tool for visual, one tool for end-to-end, one for functional, one for unit. So it's like too many tools for one piece of development code. But now I think the people will start to use one tool, which is Cypress, for all these tests, which makes the life easier, because the APIs that they use, they can use the same Cypress APIs to deal with all these things. As I said, your component test will use the same APIs. Once you mount your component, you still use the same clicks and assertions to do the same thing like that we do for the end-to-end tests.
Right.
Which is great, actually. So yeah, I think very nice to know that. So we may have a few questions. Maybe I will be the first person to ask a question. So you mentioned about, guys, you can put your questions. Meanwhile, I'll ask my question. So you said about the visual test that you use Apply tools, but however, there is something like a snapshot test, where I think you can save your snapshot and then you can test it against that. So is that not visual test?
So there are two things. So you can take a screenshot, even in Cypress, right, where it will take a picture from a browser, and now you have a PNG image, and you can compare it with previously saved image. So that's visual testing or visual regression testing. And if you go to our guide on visual testing, which is, I can put it on Cypress, your visual testing, we show examples of all of that, right? We show open source, we show commercial services. To be perfectly fair, I have like an hour free set of videos doing component visual testing using open source tools. And you can completely do it. The problem there, but you'll have to manage images, update it, show it, compare it, right? It all requires work, and it requires you to do this thing. The modern visual testing services like Apply tools, Percy, Hapo, they're competing against each other, right? That's why BrowserStack bought Percy, because it's a great thing. They give you away 5,000 screenshots per month. And think how effective a single screenshot of an entire application page is. It asserts that everything that should be there is visible and nothing has changed. So you need a single screenshot to test the whole page. Okay, so I think it's extremely effective. And when you get so many of them for free, you're like, why should I implement it? And then I remember like Percy price was $30 a month for 5,000 more screenshots. Like, why would I implement my own custom system and manage all those images for $30 a month? Like 1 hour of my time I already blown through this budget. So that's why I say you can do it yourself. Absolutely. But just try our services. They all have Cypress plugins. Takes like half an hour to try it out, and then see if you want to implement your own solution. The second part, the snapshots. So in unit testing, there is a concept of a snapshot, like an object that is serialized and saved. So many people have tried it in React. I tried it. I've written a bunch of libraries for that. And you find that it's not that useful. If you're trying to take a snapshot of a giant API response, all of a sudden you're like, it changed so much. Is it really what I want to do or not? So for me, and especially when we did surveys, the snapshot testing with objects became like very low priority. And visual testing, where you take the visually thing that the user sees, that's important, right? So that's why we're kind of moving away from snapshot to screenshot visual testing.
Perfect. Okay, cool. I got some good questions from here. So is Cypress supports mobile app testing?
Unfortunately not, because mobile browsers are completely different. We really want, so people ask us about IE11 support and Safari support. We're looking for open source contributors because I don't want to implement IE11 support. It's not easy or even feasible, honestly. So we'll just wait until Microsoft officially retires IE11. In that case, we'll just say, well, Microsoft has retired. So for desktop Safari, very few people use it. What we really want to implement is mobile Safari browser support, right? Where it runs on real device, but it's going to be tough, but it's on our roadmap. It's just we haven't started to work on that. So, but we don't do mobile testing for mobile apps. If you want, you should look up a thing called Detox. It's a testing thing. I think they use the same philosophy of like being inside the app and testing, but I have no experience with it. We don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. Thanks for that. And there was one question from our co-chair, it's Narayanan. So he's asking, is there any plan to integrate report portal to Cypress for AI reporting?
No, all the reporting. So we include standard Mocha reporters. We also include like JUnit. All additional reporting, they have plugins nowadays, right? You get all our test results, and if you use our NPM module API, you get the whole object with all the details and screenshot, and you just send it to your report portal. So we don't have it as a core feature. It should be a plugin. We don't provide native kind of support.
Okay, no problem. And there was one guy who's asking difference between shadow and mount, and which one is effective?
Okay, so we just implemented shadow DOM support, right? So all your web components that do like isolation with shadow roots on a page, we just implemented that as a first core feature. It used to be behind a flag. Now you can find elements and traverse shadow DOM boundaries. So that's nice and good. The mount command that I've shown, it's for component testing, where you say, import that component from Vue, from Angular, from React, whatever framework, and mount it in an iframe where usually you visit the site, and then start it as a mini web application. But it's like real application. So the mount doesn't care if inside you have shadow DOM, nothing. It's just saying, take that component and start it up, and now interact with it like with a real test. So what happens, so I have a recipe in our Cypress example recipes repo where you download a file like CSV, Excel, and you verify it. The same thing will be done for PDF. You have to like click around on your app, download PDF, but then you probably have to find a node library to verify it. Cypress has no built-in way of like reading PDF. It will read it as a binary, right? But then it's up to you to how do you want to verify it.